What happens when a black teenager challenges not just one professor, but an entire academic system? In Part 1, we witnessed how Isaiah Brooks, once just known as the janitor's son, shocked the world by solving quantum equations that even Ivy League scholars couldn't crack. But what followed wasn't applause. It wasn't congratulations. It was something far uglier. Accusations, threats, institutional revenge, and worst of all, a battle that could break him mentally, emotionally, and academically. In this second chapter, you're about to witness the backlash he never expected, the fear he couldn't escape, and the fight for survival, both as a mathematician and as a young black man in a system not built for him. If this story moves you even just for a moment, if you believe talent like Isaiah's deserves to be seen supported and celebrated, please help this channel reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and let's make sure stories like this don't go unheard. Now, let's dive into Part 2, The Genius Unleashed. For the first time in his life, Isaiah Brooks was being seen. But being seen wasn't the same as being accepted. The morning after his public presentation at Eastbridge University, Isaiah sat by his bedroom window, staring at the headlines on his cracked phone screen. Janitor's son. Stuns Ivy League with quantum breakthrough. Untrained teen outsmarts Harvard scholars. The black genius from the basement lab. The words felt like both a crown and a target. Malcolm watched his son from the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "You okay, champ?" Isaiah shrugged. "They're not talking about the math, Dad. They're talking about me like I'm a circus act." Malcolm's heart broke a little at that. You shook their world. People don't know how to handle that. Meanwhile, on campus, the faculty lounge was on fire. Dr. Lionel Thatcher slammed his coffee cup onto the table. "Do you realize what this means?" he barked at Caldwell and Dr. Fielding. "We're being humiliated. By a teenager with no formal education, this will destroy the department's credibility." Caldwell stayed calm. "Or maybe it'll wake us up." Dr. Fielding leaned in. "This isn't about department pride anymore. It's about truth." And Isaiah uncovered it. But Thatcher wasn't done. There are whispers already about reevaluating tenure reviews, about oversight into past research ethics. Do you know what that means for all of us? For the first time, Caldwell felt a sliver of fear. The ripple effect of Isaiah's discovery wasn't stopping at admiration. It was digging up uncomfortable questions about who gets credit and who's been silenced for decades. Later that day, Isaiah walked with Caldwell to the lab, trying to ignore the stares from students. Some looked at him with awe, others with jealousy, a few with open hostility. Near the physics wing staircase, a group of undergrad boys ones Isaiah had seen before stood blocking his path. "Hey, genius," one sneered. "You figure out the square root of privilege yet." The others laughed. Isaiah froze. Caldwell stepped forward. "That's enough. Step aside." But Isaiah raised a hand. "No, Professor, I got this." Turning to the boy, Isaiah said loud enough for others nearby to hear, "If privilege were measurable, you wouldn't even qualify for the denominator." A small group of students nearby gasped. Some laughed. The undergrads muttered, but stepped aside. Later, back in the lab, Isaiah sat at the whiteboard, marker in hand, but his grip trembled. Caldwell noticed. "You handled that well." Isaiah forced a smile. "I'm getting used to it." But inside, a storm brewed. For the first time, Isaiah realized this wasn't just about math anymore. It was about fighting for the right to exist in spaces that were never built for people like him. And deep down, he wondered, could he keep fighting, or would the system break him before he finished what he started? The email came late at night. Subject, formal skills assessment, required attendance from dean's office, academic oversight committee. Isaiah read it 3 times, heart-sinking with each line. A panel of 5 senior professors would conduct a closed-door assessment. Purpose: to determine the authenticity and origin of Isaiah's work. In other words, prove you're not a fraud. Malcolm slammed the letter on the kitchen table. So now they want to interrogate my son like he's a criminal. Caldwell tried to reassure them during their prep meeting at the lab. This is standard when there's a sudden breakthrough from an unexpected source. Unexpected, Malcolm snapped. You mean from someone like us? Just say it. Dr. Maya Fielding stayed silent, but nodded in agreement. Isaiah sat quietly, staring at his hands. Inside, he wasn't just nervous. He was terrified. Not of the math, but of freezing up, of being put back in that small wooden chair at Jefferson High, of Ms. Palmer's voice screaming in his head, "You're a cheater, a liar, an embarrassment." The day of the assessment arrived. Isaiah entered the cold, fluorescent-lit conference room. 5 professors sat on one side of a long table, staring like jurors. Among them, Dr. Thatcher. The question started: basic derive the wave function for a 2-particle entangled state. Isaiah did it with ease. Then, explain your approach to nonlinear time symmetry in harmonic fields. Isaiah answered referencing both textbook methods and his own modifications. But then Thatcher struck. Who really helped you with this work? Did Professor Caldwell guide you? Or was it Dr. Fielding? Maybe? Your late mother, Isaiah froze. I worked through it myself, he said quietly. Convenient answer, Thatcher sneered. But genius doesn't appear out of nowhere. Isaiah's hands began to tremble, breathing shallow. Memories flooded back, Miss Palmer standing over him, ruler in hand. The pain, the humiliation. Suddenly, the equations on the board blurred. His throat tightened. Caldwell stood. This is harassment. But before anyone else could speak, Isaiah's voice broke through. You're right, genius doesn't appear out of nowhere. The room fell silent. Isaiah's eyes burned, but his voice steadied. It comes from watching your mom work late into the night solving problems she never got credit for. It comes from sitting alone in hospital rooms reading physics textbooks because it's the only escape you have. It comes from standing at whiteboards for hours because sitting down still hurts from what people like you did to me. Isaiah stepped toward the board, grabbed a marker with shaky hands, and began solving the most difficult equation they had left untouched. Line after line appeared. The room stayed silent except for the squeak of marker on glass. 10 minutes later, Isaiah dropped the marker. Check it, he said softly. Dr. Fielding rushed forward, reviewing the work. Her eyes widened. It's correct, she whispered. Caldwell exhaled sharply. Even Thatcher was speechless. Isaiah turned to face them all. Next time you question how I got here, just remember this moment. Then he walked out, leaving behind not just answers, but witnesses to a brilliance they could no longer deny. It started with a single tweet. A grad student who'd been secretly watching the assessment through a cracked door posted, "Just witnessed a black teen destroy an Ivy League physics panel with pure math genius. Isaiah Brooks, Shabanash academic bias." Within an hour, it hit 1,000 retweets. By morning, it was trending nationwide. CNN, MSNBC, even BBC World News. Headlines exploded: Harvard panel, silenced by janitor's son, teen genius, challenges academic gatekeeping, institutional bias in education exposed, yet again. By the time Isaiah stepped outside his apartment, local news vans were parked across the street, microphones shoved in his face. Isaiah, how does it feel to prove them wrong? Were you discriminated against because of your background? Do you plan to sue Eastbridge University? What's next for the basement prodigy? Isaiah blinked in the flash of cameras, overwhelmed. Malcolm wrapped an arm protectively around his son, shouting, "No comment. Give him space." But the noise wouldn't stop. Talk shows debated the story. Podcasts broke down Isaiah's equations like play-by-play commentators at a sports game. Social media memes went viral, support black genius. Janitor's son, tenured professor. Math doesn't care about your Ivy League bias. And with fame came backlash. Online forums started swirling with conspiracy theories. There's no way he did that without help. Affirmative action stunt. Probably staged for media attention. A well-known conservative commentator went live on YouTube. Another woke university moment. Elevating people not by merit, but by social guilt. Isaiah sat on the living room floor watching it all unfold. His heart pounded. His throat tightened. Dr. Caldwell called that evening. Isaiah, stay off the internet for now. Focus on the work. Let the noise fade. But the noise wasn't fading. It was building. Later that night, Isaiah sat alone at his desk, staring at his mother's old notebook. Her handwritten formulae blurred as tears filled his eyes. They're not angry at the math, he whispered to himself. They're angry at where it came from. Malcolm entered the room quietly. "You okay, son?" Isaiah shook his head. "I wanted to be seen dad. But not like this, not like I'm some headline or political argument." Malcolm sat beside him. "You're not a story for them to twist. You're a truth they can't ignore, and truth is loud." Isaiah exhaled shakily. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The next morning, Dean Wexler's office was a war room. Thatcher stood pacing, his face red with fury. "I warned you this would happen," he hissed. "Now we're a joke on national television." Dr. Caldwell sat across the room, jaw tight, arms crossed. Dr. Fielding flipped through a thick folder of printed social media posts. "People aren't just angry," she said softly. "They're calling for resignations, demanding an independent review of how Eastbridge treats students of color." Dean Wexler massaged her temples, and what's worse, several alumni donors are pulling their pledges. That made the room go silent. Thatcher slammed his fist on the table. "This is career suicide for all of us. We need damage control now." Suddenly, an idea began circulating through the room. Dark, calculated. "We need to raise questions about the integrity of Isaiah's work," someone suggested. Create doubt. Was it really all his? Did Caldwell help too much? Was there data manipulation? Dr. Fielding's face turned pale. "You're talking about discrediting a teenager to protect your image." Thatcher shrugged. "If the institution falls, what happens to the thousands of students depending on us? Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." Caldwell stood up abruptly. "I won't be part of this." Wexler's voice rose sharply. "Sit down, Peter. Your name's already being dragged into this mess. Do you think they won't come for you, too?" That night, Isaiah received a letter slipped under their apartment door. Academic misconduct review, initiated potential plagiarism concerns. Malcolm read it aloud, his voice shaking with rage. "This is their answer. After everything, call you a cheater again?" Isaiah sat frozen, eyes wide. The word plagiarism felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Suddenly, old memories flooded back. Miss Palmer's face, the chair, the ruler. His breathing quickened, his vision blurred. I can't do this again, Dad," he whispered, hands trembling uncontrollably. "I won't survive it." Malcolm knelt in front of him, gripping both his son's shoulders tightly. "Yes, you will. You're stronger now. And you're not alone this time." The next morning, Dr. Fielding called. "We're fighting this," she said firmly. "I've already contacted a civil rights attorney specializing in education cases. They're interested." Isaiah's voice cracked. "Why does this keep happening? Why is proving I belong never enough?" There was a long pause on the phone. Then Dr. Fielding said quietly, "Because systems don't break themselves. Isaiah, they break when someone like you makes them." It started with a single Facebook post. An Eastbridge cafeteria worker named Gloria James, who had watched Isaiah grow up wandering the campus halls with his dad, shared a photo of him at the whiteboard. Her caption read, "They called him a janitor's son. We called him family. Now they call him a fraud. We see you, Isaiah, and we're standing with you." Within 24 hours, it had been shared over 200,000 times. By the end of the week, it became a hashtag stand with Isaiah local churches, organized letter-writing campaigns. Students from the Black Student Union started a sit-in protest at the university's main quad. Even alumni began contacting the administration demanding answers. The Eastbridge Daily published an editorial, "When did genius require permission?" And then, the real wave hit. Celebrities weighed in. A famous black astrophysicist tweeted, "A system that never opened the door now wants to slam it shut when brilliance walks in anyway." A viral TikTok video by an education activist recounted Isaiah's story with tears streaming down her face. How many Isaiahs have we silenced before this one? How many more if we don't stop it now? Donations poured into a GoFundMe started by former Eastbridge students, enough to cover legal fees, therapy, and even future research resources for Isaiah. Malcolm sat at their kitchen table one night, scrolling through hundreds of messages. "Read this one," he said, voice thick. Isaiah leaned over. A message from a stranger. "My son stopped doing math after being told he'd never be good enough. But after seeing your story, he picked up his notebook again. Thank you." Isaiah's eyes filled. He'd spent so long feeling small, invisible, unwanted. Now, strangers were calling him Hope. But the most emotional moment came at a community rally held on the university steps. Hundreds gathered, students, staff, parents, local residents. As Isaiah approached the mic, he saw faces he never expected, professors who had ignored him, students who once mocked him, and dozens of black children sitting on their parents' shoulders, their eyes wide with admiration. Isaiah's hands shook as he spoke. "I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask to be a story. I just wanted to solve equations and be seen for who I am." He paused, swallowing hard. "But if standing here means someone else like me doesn't have to fight this hard one day, then I'll keep standing." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears streamed down Malcolm's face, and deep inside Isaiah realized something. This fight wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the unseen geniuses still waiting for their moment. The applause from the rally still echoed in his mind. But when Isaiah sat alone in his bedroom that night, the silence was deafening. His hands trembled as he flipped through his mother's old notebook. Equations blurred. Letters danced on the page. Every time he tried to focus, a new headline, a new hateful comment, or another threat clouded his thoughts. On social media, things had turned darker. Anonymous accounts flooded his DMs. "You're a fraud. Your father cleans toilets. Stay in your lane. You'll never belong here." Malcolm walked into the room late that night and found Isaiah curled on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, face buried in his arms. "Son," Malcolm whispered, sitting down beside him. "Talk to me." Isaiah's voice was raw. "I don't want to be their symbol anymore, Dad. I don't want to be their inspiration or their target. I just want to be a kid who loves math." Malcolm placed a steady hand on his son's back. "I know." Tears spilled down Isaiah's cheeks. "But every time I pick up a marker now, I feel like I'm being watched, judged, waiting for me to fail. Malcolm's heart ached. For a second, he wished he could take all the pain, the weight of history off his son's shoulders. But he couldn't. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He stood open the closet and pulled out a dusty cardboard box labeled Leona's Archives. Inside were more of Isaiah's mother's research papers, formulas she never published, theories she never got credit for. Malcolm placed them in front of his son. Your mom fought the same fight, different faces, same system. But she kept writing, kept solving, because she believed someday someone would pick up where she left off. Isaiah stared at the box, breath shaking. Dad, what if I can't be that person? Malcolm knelt again, gripping his son's shoulders. Then just be yourself. Be Isaiah Brooks, the boy who cracked quantum entanglement on a janitor's salary and a notebook full of dreams. You don't owe them perfect. You only owe them the truth. For the first time in days, Isaiah let out a small shaky laugh through his tears. Okay, he whispered. Okay. The next morning, he walked into the lab with Caldwell and Dr. Fielding, waiting. Without a word, Isaiah picked up a marker, turned to the board, and began writing again. Not because the world told him to, but because he refused to let the world take away the one thing that had always been his, the math. The day of the public symposium arrived. Eastbridge University had no choice but to host it. Too much media pressure, too much public demand. The lecture hall was overflowing. Journalists, alumni, students, even representatives from other universities, MIT, Stanford, Princeton, all packed into the room, waiting to witness the boy the world couldn't stop talking about. Isaiah stood backstage, heart pounding like a drum. Caldwell adjusted his tie nervously. Dr. Fielding placed a reassuring hand on Isaiah's shoulder. "You ready?" she asked. Isaiah swallowed hard. "No, but I'm going out there anyway." As he stepped onto the stage, a deafening wave of applause broke out. But as he approached the podium, Isaiah's gaze locked onto one person, seated near the front row, Miss Palmer, his old math teacher. The one who made him sit in that wooden chair, the one who told him he didn't belong in advanced math, the one who made him afraid of chalk and whiteboards for over a year. She sat there, expression unreadable, arms crossed. Isaiah's breath caught in his throat. Memories surged back. The ruler, the yelling, the pain. His hands trembled. For a second, he wanted to run, but then his eyes drifted to the second row. Malcolm, sitting tall, eyes locked on him, his face a mixture of pride and unspoken words. "You've come too far to stop now, son." Isaiah closed his eyes, took a deep breath. When he opened them again, the fear didn't vanish, but something stronger took its place. Determination. He began, explaining the symphony method, demonstrating real-time problem-solving on entanglement equations, walking the audience through steps even graduate students struggled to follow. The room stayed silent, not because they weren't engaged, but because they were spellbound. Camera flashes popped. Reporters scribbled furiously. And as Isaiah wrapped up his final theorem introducing a new variable that could reshape quantum computing models, something happened no one expected. Dr. Thatcher stood up. For a brief second, everyone braced for an attack. Another accusation, another insult, but instead, Thatcher clapped. Slow at first, then faster. Soon, the whole room joined. A standing ovation. Caldwell's eyes glistened. Dr. Fielding wiped away tears. Malcolm sat frozen for a second, then stood and cheered louder than anyone. Isaiah stood there stunned. For the first time, applause didn't feel like noise. It felt earned. After the event, reporters surrounded him, but one voice cut through the chaos. "Miss Palmer," she approached, her expression strained. "I didn't know you had it in you," she said awkwardly. Isaiah stared at her. calm, controlled. "I always did," he replied. "You just didn't want to see it." With that, he turned away, walking toward his father, toward his professors, toward the people who finally believed in him. And somewhere deep inside, he knew. This wasn't the end of his journey. This was just the turning point. 2 weeks after the symposium, Isaiah sat in a sunlit office, his new office, a space inside Eastbridge University's freshly established Center for Inclusive Theoretical Research. A center named after someone who had paved the way but never got to walk it herself, the Leona Brooks Research Fellowship. On the wall, framed and gleaming, was a photo of his mother smiling, holding him as a baby, surrounded by chalkboard equations. Isaiah traced his fingers along the frame heart, swelling. "We're here now, Mom," he whispered. The fallout from the symposium had been seismic. Multiple faculty members, including Thatcher, were placed under formal review for discriminatory practices. The university's funding board fast-tracked diversity hiring programs. And most importantly, Isaiah's research was now being cited in physics journals worldwide. But with opportunity came responsibility. That afternoon, Isaiah met with a group of high school students from the local community, kids who, just like him, had once been told they didn't belong in STEM fields. He stood in front of them, marker in hand. "You don't need permission to be brilliant," he told them. "You don't need someone to validate your mind before you start using it." One little girl raised her hand shyly. "Can we do what you did?" Isaiah smiled wide. "Absolutely. In fact, I'm counting on it." Later that evening, sitting in the same cafeteria where his dad once mopped floors, Isaiah watched as Malcolm Now, facilities operations manager, laughed with old co-workers, no longer just the janitor. Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Fielding joined them, raising a toast. "To change," Caldwell said. "To accountability," Fielding added. Isaiah lifted his glass of orange juice. "To every kid like me, still waiting for someone to believe." As the sun set over Eastbridge campus, a text buzzed on Isaiah's phone. An invitation. Keynote speaker. MIT Physics Symposium. Next month. Isaiah stared at it, letting the moment sink in. He wasn't just being seen anymore. He was being called. For the first time, he smiled without hesitation. "Let's get to work." If this story moved you even just for a moment, if you've ever felt underestimated, or if you've seen someone else's light dimmed because the world refused to look closely enough, please help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Every like, every comment and every subscription is a small push toward more voices, like Isaiah's, being heard. And let me ask you, have you ever been told you weren't good enough only to prove them wrong? Drop your story in the comments. Let's build this space together. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing, and never forget, brilliance exists everywhere. It just needs room to shine.